Bill, I think, could like very quietly be on like his third or fourth plate of turkey, like in the corner, like, grandpa's like, leave grandpa alone, right? Just let him eat. And Bill would be, probably pounding away some turkey.
So he's like the tortoise to Dan Campbell's hare in this situation. So Dan comes out fast and furious. Bill a slow, steady gorging throughout. I could see him putting up numbers.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome into Monkey Knife Fights Thanksgiving Weekend Super Show. I'm Dan Watkins. Joining me, the dynamic duo from Rotowire, Nick Whalen and John McKechnie. Boys, what a weekend we have coming up. I mean, just absolutely fantastic. 3 days to just stuff our faces with food, football, other sports, everything. It's just awesome. We got the final regular season of college football coming up as well. To go along with that is a just fantastic Week 12 NFL slate. The highlight, of course, that AFC Central battle between the Ravens and Jags from back in the day.
Hey,
we would start with this. Since this is a safe space and we're all friends here, raise your hand if you've been personally victimized by Ben Skowronek in thinking that he is a relevant fantasy option with Cooper Kupp being out, because I fell for that last weekend. Anybody else?
I feel like I've more been victimized by thinking Ben Skowronek is Cooper Kupp when I'm watching games, and it's like, oh, there's another catch for Cooper Kupp. Like, wait, no, that was Skowronek. So I got to be honest, I did not go and grab him on any teams. I apologize on behalf of the fantasy community that he has caused you some pain and suffering, Dan, but I've just been trying to stay far, far away from the Rams.
I definitely got duped by him a couple times during his season at Notre Dame. Where it felt like he was really like one of the only viable pass catching options, and I needed a receiver for like 4K on whatever DFS site. So like that my scarring from Skowronek, it runs deep, and it's been a while. They're well worn at this point.
Yeah, I picked him up, and I even started him in like a flex spot in one league because I was just so desperate with a couple guys on IR, and one catch, 4 yards. Rough day, very rough day. And speaking of rough days, and just painful viewing experiences, all three of us went to some games this past week with some, well, to put it kindly, lackluster offensive performances. Nick, we'll start with you. You went to the Thursday night football game between the Packers and the Titans. You get to see Derrick Henry throw a touchdown, but then you also have to sit through that Packers offense, man. 4-7. What is going on in Green Bay?
Well, I would say there's a sense of relief coming out of this game that it's pretty much officially over at this point. I know mathematically there's probably like a 3% chance that the Packers could find their way into the playoff race. But, coming into that game after the win over Dallas, there was at least a little bit of an upswell of momentum. Obviously we've seen this kind of thing from Rodgers before, where they've struggled in the first half. They've kind of had some sort of galvanizing point and taken off from there. That's not going to happen this year. And really, Rodgers, I felt like, was the primary culprit in this game. I mean, he was wildly outplayed by Ryan Tannehill, who had maybe the best game of his career as a passer. I mean, he was dropping dimes the entire night. But when it comes down to it, it's like, yeah, defensively, you don't want to allow almost 30 points to the Tennessee Titans. But when you have the 4-time MVP, the 2-time defending MVP, you got to be able to win a shootout at home with a team like Tennessee. And Green Bay had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity late in that game. And for the most part, that's been the story of the year is, Aaron Rodgers being given a chance, like, all right, we need to go down and get a score here. And usually that possession ends with a 3-and-out. So it's over. I don't know where the season goes from here for the Green Bay Packers, but I can tell you it was a frustrated and pretty depressing atmosphere at Lambeau Field on Thursday night.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for Zach Wilson just being a complete moron in his post-game press conference, Aaron Rodgers would have taken the cake this week. I love the question when the reporter goes, Aaron, where do you go from here? And he just, home. It's just being a total douche to the reporter there. But John, you go to the Ravens-Carolina game. Your Baltimore Ravens, they're 7-3, but can I get a temperature check here? 13-3, barely putting up over 300 yards on that Carolina team.
Yes. Quickly before I jump into that game, the Derrick Henry pop pass for the touchdown, that's a very triggering play to me because the Titans ran that in their playoff win over the Ravens a couple of seasons ago. And at that point, I literally ripped my shirt in half out of anger. Like I went full Hulk mode. Haven't been there before or since, but in that moment, there I was. But as far as the Ravens game this past Sunday goes, I give them a slight pass because they're a little bit rusty, having just played like one game in 23 days, coming off the bye. They opened the game with a really nice play call for Patrick Ricard on a wheel route. He drops it, and it was also like a illegal man downfield, so it was all nixed, and like it felt like that was Roman's like ace in the hole. It didn't work, and then the offense just like the play calling, the sequencing was brutal the rest of the way. I don't think that that's going to improve necessarily. It's just a matter of the Ravens kind of being able to execute, and for them to not cover despite having like four takeaways in the fourth quarter and like starting drives in plus territory and still not being able to push over that 13 points. Very, very frustrating, but we'll see what happens this week. But overall, that was one of the more dull games that I've ever been to. I woke up at 6 a.m. to get to the airport to fly up to Baltimore that day, and it was way colder than I was signing up for. So I was just displeased overall at what happened at the Big Crab Cake on Sunday.
Tough day. And to round out the trifecta of dullness this past week, I was at Gillette Stadium with the Patriots and Jets going at it. And boy, was that a brutal game to watch in person. The wind was whipping, freezing cold. The final 20 seconds, absolutely electric. I mean, I can cross off the almost walk-off punt return touchdown off the sports bucket list, which was really cool. Marcus Jones flying. He is very, very fast, by the way. Just absolutely a burner out there for the Pats running. But I should have known going into that game that it was going to be tough and that points were going to be hard to come by, because I saw not one, but two kicker jerseys on my way into the stadium. At the tailgate, I sent this photo to Nick on Sunday morning. Someone a couple cars down from me had an autographed Nick Folk jersey on. Very interesting move. And then I also saw an Adam Vinatieri jersey walking in. I don't think I've actually seen a Vinatieri jersey in person before, but I did see one on Sunday. So how do we feel about kicker jerseys? Yay or nay?
I mean, if they're autographed, I think it absolutely plays. Wearing an autographed jersey in general, just a huge power move. And I believe, based on the photo that you did send me, it looked like a pretty legit one. Like, this wasn't like, you tossed it to him at Patriots family night and he scribbled the autograph on it. Like, this looked like an official, stitched jersey, one that would almost be meant for framing. So I, as a jersey connoisseur, to me, that's a little bit frowned upon. There are certain jerseys that are made to be framed and displayed at your home. That was one of them. But on the other hand, you got to admire, the grit that it takes to wear that jersey out, risk getting beer spilled on it, risk, getting those meatballs in the crock pot, maybe some sauce drips down onto that jersey. This guy clearly didn't care. And for that, I respect him.
That guy's a professional. I think he even has the lot we tailgate in. I think he might've actually bought the corner of that lot, and he puts a huge trailer in that corner, opens it up. He's got the TV set up, everything going on in there. But John, kicker jerseys, yay or nay?
I'm a little bit biased because I root for a team that has the greatest kicker of all time. So I feel like Justin Tucker is like an acceptable jersey. It's not one that I would choose.
Well, wait, do you see a lot of Tucker jerseys when you're at a Ravens game? You do? Okay.
Yeah, you absolutely do. I saw a Scott Mitchell jersey. There's some funky jerseys going on Sunday. The Scott Mitchell got him. Also saw a guy wearing Lamar's Pompano Beach, Florida high school jersey. So that's a cool ass jersey, and it's also got some purple and gold going on in it. So it makes sense as a Ravens fan to bring that to the stadium. But in general, if you're out there buying a kicker jersey, I think that the only excuse otherwise is the kicker kind of has to have a good name. Like West Virginia, their kicker's name is Casey Legg. That's a great kicker name, ergo a great kicker jersey to wear. But if you're buying a Rodrigo Blankenship jersey, there's some life choices you probably need to reevaluate.
But what if you get the goggles with it though? Do you have the jersey and the goggles on?
But who wants to commit to a bit that hard for a guy who stinks at kicking? I'm out on that. I've always been a bit of a hot rod hater.
Yeah, I think if I was to go with a kicker jersey, I think Sebastian Janikowski, a nice Raiders jersey back in the day, I would rock that. Even a Cameron Dicker the kicker, like a Texas Cameron Dicker jersey hitting that kick against Oklahoma a couple of years ago. I think that's acceptable too.
Yes, definitely true. Gus Johnson yelling Dicker the kicker, one of the great calls.
Speaking of Gus Johnson, he had a great night Saturday out in the Battle of Los Angeles, a very fun and wild week 12 of college football now behind us. Tennessee, their dreams, well, they go up in the Smoky Mountains. Hendon Hooker out for the year. South Carolina laying 63. Spencer Rattler, there he is. John, we've been waiting for that kind of performance for, since we started doing the college football show here on MKF, 430 plus yards, 6 touchdowns for Rattler. So the Vol season is over. But John, I feel like we're looking at this scenario now that we've kind of been dreading. We've been talking about that Clemson's somehow going to sneak in to this college football playoff. And I can see it happening. They're going to win the ACC. They're probably going to roll over North Carolina. And then they're going to go to the college football playoff as that 4 seed and get stomped by Georgia like 34-3.
Yeah, I would love to see said stomping, but that does feel like where they're ticketed. One quick comment on the Gus Johnson USC UCLA game. What a perfect game for him to be on the call for when there's a guy who gets a lot of targets at receiver named Bobo. Hearing Gus Johnson exclaiming Bobo like 12 times on Saturday, like that helped kind of make the overall experience. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens this weekend in the game. I'm starting to be a little bit skeptical that Michigan can hang on just because I'm worried about Blake Corum, of course. And, I think that Ohio State just has so much weaponry on its offense that if they're able to kind of win big, then maybe Michigan drops out. And that's another team or another spot, another chair available at the table for a team like Clemson, who, is going to have an overall fairly underwhelming resume, but it just doesn't have enough losses on it to keep them out, especially with the cachet that they've built over the playoff era, essentially. So yeah, they're just going to be that de facto team that gets offered up to the gods in the semifinal. And that's going to be the game that you don't really have to pay too much attention to.
Yeah. What do you guys?
Hold on a second. Are they jumping 1-loss USC here in this scenario? Are we assuming that TCU or USC is going to lose, or do you guys think Clemson gets the nod over either of those teams if it's a head-to-head?
Well, I'm fully expecting Notre Dame to beat USC this week.
Okay. We're just operating under that assumption. Okay.
Yeah, we are just assuming that.
It's like, what are we talking about here, guys? I had to check. Like, USC didn't lose, did they?
No.
Okay. Well, in that scenario, then fine, sure.
All right, Nick. But Nick, I will bring this back to you though. You live in Big Ten country. You went to Wisconsin. What do you make of the officials in that Michigan game at the end though? The non-call on that. He was like 8 yards down the field, still blocking, I think, at one point.
Hey, I'm all for it. Set up. They want to set up, the best possible stage for Saturday. Look, I don't really have. I really have just kind of like checked out on Big Ten football this year with what's going on with Wisconsin. I did not want to see Illinois win that game. I'll tell you that. So I was personally okay with it. Should it have been called? Yeah, absolutely, it should have. But it is what it is. I think your Patriots, also benefited from a questionable no call at the end of that game against the Jets.
Yeah, he was coming from the side. Everybody wanted to get out of there. The refs wanted to get
Why did he do that? Why did he feel the need? Like, I mean, look, if you want to say he came from the side, like whatever, I don't really care if it was called or not, but like, why are you making any contact there?
Yeah, he was already 5 yards ahead of him.
Yeah.
Caught, but yeah, I think everybody wanted to get out of there. But that like the thought, the dread and the thought that's like popping into my head in that fourth quarter is like, oh, please do not go to overtime. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't take standing here anymore.
I think there were 15 straight scoreless possessions, right? Counting that final punt by the Jets. That was 15 possessions in a row with no points. And 13 of those were 3 and outs.
I love the Zach Wilson answer at the end. Like, talk about a dude that is just immature and doesn't get it. Like, do you feel like you've let your defense down at all? No.
Hey, they let me down. They allowed 3 points.
Exactly. Like, you could have given up none. Like, you guys could have pitched a shutout and we would have won 3-0. But anyways, Ohio State, Michigan, we're looking at the first matchup with these two teams undefeated since 2006. So some big Troy Smith, Chad Henne vibes going into this weekend and the game there. But another fun little story in college football as we head into this Thanksgiving week. We got the Egg Bowl coming up. And of course, Lane Kiffin in the news, as he is seemingly every single week. But John Sokoloff, the sports anchor at the CBS affiliate down in Mississippi, reports that Lane Kiffin will be the new head coach at Auburn. Kiffin then denying that, going on a weird social media rampage Monday night, saying no, John Sokoloff's actually leaving his job and going to the the rival TV station or whatever, and just pulling a whole bunch of other people into this mess. You got the Auburn beat writer for Alabama.com going on the Paul Feinbaum show and saying that Auburn's going to name their coach ahead of the Iron Bowl this weekend. But basically, I feel like the Lane Kiffin situation, Lane Kiffin is like that relative. He's that uncle, that cousin that comes to Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner every year with a new girlfriend. He's got like some serious commitment issues. He's 47 years old. He's been the head coach of the Raiders, USC, Tennessee, FAU, Ole Miss now, might be going to Auburn. His longest relationship is 3 years. But John, I'm going to ask you this. Is this the right move if he does go?
I think Auburn's a better job than Ole Miss is. Absolutely. I think it's easy to have the short-term memory about how these last few years have gone on the Plains. The Harsin hire was doomed from the start. But Kiffin's a guy who can, he's an ace recruiter. I think that he's going to, have the full support of, that, and that's a huge thing at Auburn. There's a lot of like too many cooks in the kitchen as far as like how much influence their boosters have on their decision making and the coaching and all that stuff. But I think that they can all kind of be in lockstep behind Lane and kind of give him everything. Whereas Harsin, it felt like it was a very narrow, like majority wanted him to be the coach there. So it just didn't make all that much sense. And but it's a weird job, and you obviously have to play Alabama every year. We'll kind of see what the new alignment looks like once the expansion happens. But I do think that, recruiting resources in the state of Alabama, you're right on the Georgia border. You can nail West Georgia, start to like take away a little bit of Georgia's footprint there. You're still going to have to battle Alabama and Georgia, but I still feel like that is overall the better job than Ole Miss is. And it wouldn't surprise me for him to go there. And as a Georgia fan, I am very concerned about the idea of Lane Kiffin cooking with Auburn ingredients for sure.
Nick, what do you think? Is Auburn the one for Uncle Lane?
I default to John on this. We talked about it last night, and I'm like, is Auburn really that much better of a job than Ole Miss? And John right away said, yes, unequivocally it is. So it's a step up. It's like, if you're Lane Kiffin, maybe you kind of want to wait around for an even bigger fish in terms of what job could become available in the next few years. I think, Auburn is a job that he could turn around quickly, but it's still going to take some work. This is not like a ready-made college football playoff contender all of a sudden next season. So you're kind of stepping into a similar situation to what you came into at Ole Miss. Although I guess, if Lane Kiffin has taught us anything, it's not that he really needs to time out any of these moves. If the Alabama job were to open up in 3 years and he's having success at Auburn, I think he would just hop on over to there. I don't really think that there needs to be this linear trajectory for him. But it's interesting. Obviously, he's disputing all of these reports. He's kind of launching a somewhat sarcastic takedown of this reporter who said last night that he's going to take this job. To me, it still feels like it's going to end with him taking the Auburn job. Like almost always when there's this much smoke, there's fire.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, no, guys, don't talk about this. Not happening. Totally not happening. Yeah. And he goes and takes it. So let's bring this back to the Michigan-Ohio State game. I know a lot of you guys who play on MKF are interested in this one. Ohio State is favored by 7.5 going in, the over-under at 57. John, let's start with CJ Stroud. He's averaging about 271 yards per game. Michigan, though, they rank 5th in passing defense, allowing just 161 yards through the air. Last year, though, in this game at Michigan in the snow, 34 of 49, 394 yards in that 42-27 loss. What do we see out of CJ Stroud, who I think needs that Heisman moment this weekend if he wants to take it? Because I think Caleb Williams might be the guy right now.
Yeah, Caleb Williams is definitely surging. We'll get to him here soon. But yeah, Stroud, He looked good last week against Maryland. I thought that he was mostly pretty effective, but this is obviously like the make or break as far as his Heisman case is concerned. And he had the gaudy numbers last year, but I don't think that anyone thought that Stroud played particularly well in the game last year. I think the fact that this one is at home, that's a huge boost. You kind of haven't had a huge performance from Marvin Harrison in a little bit. I think that he's going to come ready to play. Emeka Egbuka is still someone who I think is kind of underrated on a national scale. And a guy I also have been pretty impressed by is that Cade Stover tight end. I think that he's a, kind of a people mover that can really get it done down the seam. So that I think all the ingredients are in place. And I think Michigan, they might struggle offensively. And I think that Ohio State's going to want to keep their foot on the gas here. And also they have their own backfield injury issues as well. I mean, they got Trevion Henderson back last week, but not sure about Mayan Williams this week. Dallin Hayden, obviously pretty good because he's an Ohio State running back. Of course, he's talented, but I think that things are set up in a way for Stroud to have a pretty big game here. Oh, there's a deer right outside the window. Holy smokes. 2 of them. Look at that.
Look at that. A lot of deer around. A lot of deer around.
3.
Nick, what do you think out of CJ Stroud?
I said to John a couple of weeks ago, I feel like CJ Stroud is just going to kind of back his way into this Heisman. It has not been a compelling season by CJ Stroud whatsoever. Things have come relatively easy for Ohio State, and it does feel like this is kind of his singular defining game of the season. And, I think Caleb Williams has the same opportunity against Notre Dame, maybe not quite as big of a stage as Ohio State, Michigan, and a top 3 battle between these teams. But I think if CJ Stroud goes off in this game, he probably solidifies his spot as the Heisman winner. Again, it won't really feel like one of those defining Heisman seasons that we've had in years past. I think it'll, very similar in some ways to Troy Smith winning it all the way back in 2006, where it's just like, well, I guess he's the quarterback on the best team, so we got to hand it to him. But to me, I mean, Caleb Williams has been the more exciting player. He's been more important, I think, to his team's success. But USC has a loss. Obviously, USC, you guys feel could end up losing this game to Notre Dame. And even if CJ Stroud doesn't have an unbelievable performance, if he just plays okay and Ohio State wins, but USC loses, then, I think he pretty much has it locked up.
Definitely. All right. Blake Corum, John, he says the knee is fine. He's been spotted handing out turkeys this week heading into Thanksgiving. He's averaging 132 yards per game. He's rushed for over 108 straight. Ohio State, though, they're ranked 15th in the nation when it comes to stopping the run, allowing just over 100 yards per game. Last year for Corum in this one, 6 carries, 87 yards. He had that big 55-yard run at 1.2. But what do we see out of Corum? Are you expecting he really is a full go for this one?
No. I did not like the looks of that one. I'm not a doctor, but I did not like the looks of that. And the fact that he comes out for the first series of the second half against Illinois and then doesn't touch the ball, doesn't get on the field the rest of the way, that's a concern. And I think if you're Michigan, you're doubly concerned because Donovan Edwards didn't play last week. So even if he's back, we don't know if he's at 100% either. So, Stokes is going to kind of have to be the guy potentially. And I think Michigan is so tethered to Corum, and he's such a vital part of their success that anything less than a stellar game from him, I think Michigan is probably in pretty big trouble unless they force some turnovers with their defense. So I'm neutral as far as this game goes. I tend to root for Michigan. I hope I'm not making any Ohio State people angry. I don't really care, but I just have this sinking feeling that we're not going to see a full Blake Corum. And I think with that, we're going to see Ohio State win this one fairly convincingly.
Nick, if I set Corum's number at like 90 yards, 90 and a half, how do you feel?
I think I got to go less on that. I think you kind of have to just compensate for the injury. And look, if it's that high, I wouldn't be comfortable telling anybody to go more on that. And, John's as plugged in as anybody, when it comes to tracking these injuries week to week. So if he's worried about it, then I'm absolutely worried about it. And Michigan should be as well. All
right. John, which Ohio State receiver is going to have the biggest day?
It's Harrison. It's the chalky answer, but it's the truth. Like Ibuka is almost as good as Harrison, but I think Harrison is the more kind of like alpha of that receiving group. So I think that he's the one that is going to see the most targets, and I think he's going to do the most with them.
All right. How about a prediction? What do we got? Who's winning?
Give me Ohio State 31, Michigan 20.
Nick?
I'll say Ohio State 35, Michigan, give a weird score, 22. I think they get to 22 points here.
All right. I've been saying for like 2 months that Ohio State's going to wipe the floor. I think I picked them by 3 touchdowns a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to stick with that. Give me Buckeyes 37, Wolverines 13. I think this is not going to be close at all.
Oh, man. Okay. We need that game to be good for that early window, though. But, yeah, I mean, that seems very feasible.
All right, moving on. Notre Dame at USC. The Trojans favored by 5. The over/under 63. The Irish trying to continue playing that spoiler role this month, as we talked about at the start of November, the start of Chaos Month. But Caleb Williams is just on another level right now, over 500 yards against UCLA in Week 12. He's averaging 316 passing yards a game, John. Notre Dame, though, sneaky good pass defense, allowing just 186 yards per game. And they held C.J. Stroud to 223 back in Week 1. I could see this being kind of a similar type of game in this one. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, Williams, I mean, what we were treated to on Saturday night, the USC-UCLA game, that was one of the best games of the season. And I thought it gets papered over because UCLA lost, but I just got to shout out DTR. Like, I thought that was one of the grittiest, like, just so clearly in a lot of pain on his throwing hand and just still getting after it, still like tucking and running, still delivering the ball. Just awesome stuff from him. But Caleb outshined him even. He was unbelievable, making throws on the run. You have Jordan Addison back to being himself. The rest of that receiving core, we'll see what's up with Mario Williams. But I think regardless, USC has a lot of ingredients to cook with this weekend. I know that Notre did that freshman who had 3 interceptions this past weekend. So you're going to have to be leery about throwing the ball in his direction, of course. But I feel like the way that Travis Dye is out for the season, I know that USC still ran the ball relatively effectively this past weekend. I still think that this ends up being the Caleb Williams show. So I think that we're going to see a big game from him. I don't know if necessarily that means that USC wins, but I think that that's going to happen no matter what.
Nick, you like a big night out of Williams?
I think if USC wins this game and if they want to, hang around in the college football playoff discussion, and it begins and ends with Caleb Williams. So yeah, I mean, I don't think you're going to find many people who say, you know what, Caleb Williams is not going to play well against this Notre Dame team. But I mean, Notre Dame comes in red hot, 5 straight wins. They've taken some puzzling losses this season. Obviously, got off to a really shaky start, losing that game to Marshall. You lose to Stanford, only score 14 points in that game, but the offense has come around these last few weeks. I mean, playing Boston College last week certainly helps. USC is only a 5.5 point favorite at home. I like the Trojans to win this game, but I think that they've had a way of kind of making things more complicated than they need to be at times this season. So I think we do get a good game. Maybe we get the blowout in the early window, but I think the late window swoops in and saves us with this one.
John, you brought up Jordan Addison, who had his best game of the year last week, 11 catches, 178 yards and a touchdown. What do we see out of him Saturday night?
So he's different. He's Blitnikoff Award winner last year with Kenny Pickett as his quarterback. And comes over to USC and is exactly as advertised. So I think that he's probably the best receiver in this draft class. And yeah, I just think that he's going to be tough for Notre Dame to bracket. They're probably going to try to roll some coverage and everything, but USC has a lot of depth at the receiver position as well. So it's, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, if with however you want to play Addison and maybe let other guys burn you. But I think that Addison's going to be the one who steps up this weekend. I mean, I think that he can get into the 100-yard range, for instance, this weekend against Notre Dame.
So I think Notre Dame's running the ball really well right now. They're basically running as much as they want to at will at the moment. They got that 3-headed monster in the backfield with Austin Estime, Baby Bus, by the way, fantastic nickname. I love it. Dude's going to be a monster next year. Logan Diggs running well, and Chris Tyree. John, which one of those guys would you target in a contest on MKF?
I would take Tyree out of the equation. I think that Estime and Diggs are the two kind of tougher runners. And I think that those are the type of physical, low to the ground, 200 plus pound type of guys that I think are going to be able to kind of dice through that USC front seven. So Estime and Diggs are where I'm looking, and Estime I think is my preferred choice. He needs to hold on to the ball a little bit better, as you know, Dan. But at the same time, I think that pound for pound, he's probably the most talented, in my opinion, of that backfield. And I think that he's the one that I would be trying to get some action on. I think if there's a Tyree number that's posted, I'm probably going less on it, unless it's like 30 yards, that type of thing. I think it's Estime and Diggs are the top guys this weekend.
All right. How about a prediction in this one, Nick? Does USC survive?
You know what? I always kind of find myself rooting for USC. I think this goes all the way back to Reggie Bush in like 2005. I've wanted USC to be back. I've been trying to will it to happen. We got a brief glimpse of it seemingly with Sam Darnold a few years ago. Turned out that was not quite what we thought it would be, but this would be a massive win. Obviously would put USC squarely in that CFP conversation. I think they get it done. Again, I think we get a close game. I think Notre Dame is going to find ways to hang around, but I'm going to go USC 33, Notre Dame 30.
All right. And you're pushing on the total too. It's a 63 on the over under.
Ooh, I was seeing 64.5, but yeah, we'll push the total on there. Sure.
All right, cool. Very good. John.
Give me USC 34, Notre Dame 27.
All right.
So I got USC covering.
I'm going to back my guy, Marcus Freeman, big game coach. Give me Notre Dame walk-off field goal, Irish 24, Trojans 23. Barely skating by. Give me the walk-off field goal. All right. It is Thanksgiving week. So some of the listeners want to know, do any of the MKF hosts here have some weird Thanksgiving traditions?
Not really. No. I mean, I guess other than like hanging out with my family, which can occasionally go off the rails, nothing that I would consider weird.
No, John?
I wouldn't say that we have much in the way of weird traditions either. I have a rather small nuclear family, but occasionally we'll go up to my aunt's, and I think if you're a listener, you'd love to be a fly on the wall at one of those Thanksgiving dinners. It's in Dundalk, which is a neighborhood in Baltimore. It's a little blue collar, a little tough, and you get some interesting characters coming in to that dinner throughout the day. So that's about it. You know, I get my full dose of Ball Marie's for the entire year in one sitting when I go up to Dundalk.
Very, very good. Very good. Yeah, no like traditions in my family, you know, going back a few years. But this year, though, I am in charge of frying the turkey for the first time for the whole family. So,
oh, wow. That is a big responsibility, kind of a passing of the torch.
It's a big job. Yeah. So, no, we normally don't do the fried turkey, but this year, my cousin and I, we got the big pot. So we're going to do that this year. We did Friendsgiving a couple weeks ago. So we had like, I don't know, 15, 20 friends over. No problems. We did the dry run, the test run. No problem with the fryer. So this is round 2 for the fam. I mean, I think the biggest worry really is like the dogs. There's going to be like 7 dogs at this one. So like they'll just be circling, foaming at the mouth. But yeah, nothing too crazy in the Watkins household anyway. So, but what about the MKF listeners and the contest players? These guys submitting some of their best takes on Twitter. So let's start off with this. John, I think we talked about this last year on the Thanksgiving show, but cranberry sauce, just molded jelly. How do you guys feel about cranberry sauce?
So I like cranberry sauce. It's fine. This is the only time of year that I eat it. And I think that there's something charming about the look of just the ridged, like can shaped glob that's sitting there on the table that no one's really touching. And then maybe I'll like mix in like a little slice of it. It's a very satisfying slice that you get going on when you have cranberry sauce, the pre-made kind. The homemade, yes, it tastes better, but the experience of this strange gelatinous cube, I'm just kind of into it. So like naming the cranberry sauce, just the congealed jelly or what have you, it may not be the most flattering description of it. That's what it is, and that's fine.
Nick, cranberry sauce?
Couldn't agree more. I mean, one of those things that as a kid I just assumed was bad, and it was like, no, I hate cranberry sauce. I never, of course, tried it until later in life, and now it's a great compliment. You know, drizzle a little bit on the turkey. If I've kind of taken sometimes to making like a little bit of a turkey sandwich, depending on what you're dealing with. As far as your bread options at the table, you know, it's a nice, kind of flavor adder in that respect. And yeah, like you said, I kind of like it. You know, I like the canned shape that it comes out in. You know, it's kind of a one time a year situation. Normally, I wouldn't eat things with that level of viscosity, but it's ideal for just this one day. So I think it gets a bad rap. You know, it's become almost a cliche, I think, to kind of rag on the cranberry sauce, but it does its job. It shows up every year, and it's a nice compliment to the table.
It's something that gets better the older you get, I feel.
Right.
Like. Yeah. The older you get, the more you appreciate it. So the Dingo Dude says that turkey is an inferior protein. Thanksgiving is about the side dishes and football. Listen, I mean, ragging on turkey, it's very easy. I feel like that's just kind of a lame take at this point. Turkey is it's an everyday food. I think I eat turkey 5 out of 7 days a week. So I don't have a problem. I love turkey. It's fine.
I'm not eating turkey that often. I'll say that 5 out of 7 days.
Yeah,
you're housing some turkey.
Big turkey burger guy. Big turkey burger.
Oh
guy.
man.
Okay.
You catch John McKechnie's circa 2016 every night after a really uninspired trip to Planet Fitness. Get my protein in. Get a turkey burger. My apartment literally smelled like turkey burgers, and I definitely noticed it when I moved out. I was like, it smells like Jenny-O in here.
Yeah.
I think there's like turkey like somehow got this reputation that it was like a super meat relative to like chicken and beef. And it's like, I've never really noticed that much of a difference. Like, I don't know if it's significantly healthier. I mean, all due respect to you, Dan, 5 out of 7 days with turkey, that is a ton. I will say though, again, much like cranberry sauce, it is cliche to say, oh, turkey sucks. Like, look, would I prefer that we had chicken or steak or something? Sure. But turkey's just part of the deal. Like, it is what it is at this point. And I don't think complaining about it's going to get us anywhere.
I've never experimented with a turducken, but it is something like that I would like at least one time, just
in honor of John Madden, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And I do love that the NFL like very sneakily has branded Thanksgiving now, like the John Madden football special or something like that all day, which I think is just very well done by the NFL there. What else do we got here? Oh, here's a good question. Out of the 6 Thanksgiving Day quarterbacks, who would win a turkey eating contest? Well, we got Josh Allen, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, Mac Jones, and Kirk.
Not exactly a loaded field.
I'd go Josh.
Yeah, I think Josh Allen is definitely the betting favorite. He's probably like minus 130 or something like that. I mean, I think Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff, those guys are like 50 to 1. I don't think they have any chance. Jared Goff might be last in the league in terms of like volume turkey eaters. Like you just can't really picture him. Like, he might be somebody that like brings his own vegan option to the table and just kind of quietly warms it up in the microwave. It has to be Josh Allen. I think Dak is up there. I mean, Mac Jones, especially like rookie year Mac Jones. There were some unflattering photos of his body from the Alabama days. He was definitely going home on break when he was at Bama and hammering a bunch of turkeys. So I would go I would go Josh Allen, Mac Jones, Dak Prescott in that order.
I think the better question, actually, John, I'll start with you on this. Which of the coaches would you take in a turkey eating contest? You got Dan Campbell, Sean McDermott, Mike McCarthy, Dayball, Bill Belichick, and Kevin O'Connell. I think I'd throw Kevin O'Connell out. I don't think he's
out.
He's coming in 6th.
But I think that this might be the better competition, because Campbell, like, when you get competition in the mix, it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to sit down and eat this turkey. It's like, you have to eat more turkey than these other guys. Like, Campbell's going to get primal with it. Like, he's going to tap into the lizard brain, like the brain stem, and just really just go after it. And like, just kind of, he's crying at the table. Like, there are tears coming out of his eyes. He's so full, but he's just going to keep chugging along. And McCarthy, I feel like, he's the seasoned, grizzled vet of this. Like, he sees like a 16-pound bird and he's like, yeah, I got about half of that right there. Yeah. That looks about right. But Dayball has skyrocketed up the fat guy rankings since becoming head coach of the Giants. He's really, just puffed it out. He's a big fella now compared to his OC days. He's eating on that head coach budget now, and I think that he's a very, very serious competitor between these 3. So I think, in all, I would actually go with Dayball, because I think that he's just kind of eating in his gorging out prime right now relative to the other guys.
Dayball looks like he's playing like an insane amount of like bar league softball in the offseason. Like, he's kind of perfectly perfected that look. Like, he oftentimes like dresses like a third base coach as well, just very big into the kind of the light baggy attire. So first of all, everything you said is completely correct, John. I think, to narrow it down to McCarthy, Dayball, and Dan Campbell, but I think the most correct thing you said is the competition aspect of it. Like, I would not pick against Dan Campbell. Like, I don't think like McCarthy and Dayball have the better bodies. Like, they would be the 2 favorites here. Right. I mean, I think they have a lifetime of eating a ton of food behind them. But like you said, once Dan Campbell figures out that this is a competition, I don't think he would allow himself to lose. I think he would have a cup of gravy where he's dunking the turkey, like Kobayashi at the hot dog eating contest, like just shoving it down his throat, like kind of doing like the motion to get it to digest. So I think you're spot on to kind of spotlight the competition element of this, not just the body style.
Yeah, I think I could see Dan Campbell coming into like this competition with like his own blender, right? And just throwing it in the blender and taking it as like a shake. Like, I've actually done a complete 180 on this guy. I couldn't stand him when he first became the coach. I thought he was a total hardo with the bite you in the kneecaps and all that stuff. But now I just like, he's just like a lovable oaf, man. Like I would play for that guy. How could you not want to run through a wall for that guy? I love the post-game speech Sunday against the Giants. I like the dude. I think he's got it going on. And Detroit's won 3 in a row heading into Thanksgiving. So we'll see how they do against Buffalo. But yeah, I don't think I could pick against Campbell, but don't sleep on Belichick either in a turkey eating contest.
Yeah?
Bill has packed on some pounds the past couple of years. The hoodie is looking a little tight these days. So Bill, I think, could like very quietly be on like his 3rd or 4th plate of turkey, like in the corner, like, grandpa's like, leave grandpa alone, right? Just let him eat. And Bill would be, probably pounding away some turkey.
So he's like the tortoise to Dan Campbell's hare in this situation. So Dan comes out fast and furious. Bill a slow, steady gorging throughout. I could see him putting up numbers, but I think at the end of the day, he's past his prime as far as that goes. So we're I think, I talked Dable. I think that the table here sides with one Dan Campbell.
All right. Very good. Okay. Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about some of these games this weekend. Let's start off with that Jags and Ravens clash with you two on this show this week. John, Lamar Jackson, he's averaging about 197 passing yards a game, 66 rushing yards. What do you expect out of Lamar on Sunday?
Lamar, obviously, he's coming off a pretty shaky game, I thought, Sunday against a very bad Panthers team. So I think that would kind of most of the time steer you to think that continues for another week. But Lamar has actually played a lot better on the road for whatever reason this season. I feel like he's looked really good there. And I feel like in this spot, I know that the Jags are coming off the bye and everything, but I still feel like this is a good spot for Lamar. He looked cold on Sunday and he was sick on Friday as well. I think it's important to note that. So as long as he's escaping the injury report this week and not missing any time, and we get him at 100%, I feel like that we're in line for actually a very good Lamar Jackson game Sunday.
Nick, can the Jags contain him?
Probably not. I don't think so. I think it's disheartening that the Ravens seemingly had their letdown game this past week. Chances of that happening again, not great. I do think the Jags could potentially score with Baltimore, but I don't really see them stopping Lamar Jackson. This is a team that historically, regardless of personnel, regardless of who's the coach, they just have insane trouble against running quarterbacks. They never seem to be prepared when facing a running quarterback. You think of what Danny Dimes did to this defense earlier this season, kind of makes you shudder to think about what Lamar Jackson is able to do. And look, Trevor Lawrence has been riding a heater heading into the bye. He had 2 of his best games of his entire career back to back. I would love to see that continue, but it feels like maybe he's due for some regression. So I think, unfortunately, John is on the right track and the Ravens get this done.
All right. Travis Etienne, Nick's averaging about 72.5 yards a game. What do we see out of him?
They love running Travis Etienne. There's no question about that. And, they parted ways with James Robinson. That officially kind of, opened everything up for Etienne. And they just pound him into the line. They pound him on sweeps. They pound him out of the backfield. Like, he is their offense right now. And they're okay with that. Long term, I do wonder how viable that will be. But I love the more on Etienne. Obviously, this is a good Baltimore defense. I think the addition of Roquan Smith, as we've talked about at length on this show, is just so perfect. He's the ideal modern Baltimore Raven linebacker. So that worries me, but just based on volume alone, I'm going to go more.
John, Mark Andrews averaging about 61 yards per game. He's back and healthy. What do we see out of him?
Big game coming for him. I think that Baltimore can attack those safeties. We did see Carolina put JC Horn on Andrews. So we'll see if, Jacksonville kind of has a similar idea where they can get away with putting their cornerback 1 on Andrews. And again, it's a question of whether that person can actually still cover Mark Andrews because he's such a matchup nightmare. I feel like this is a really good game coming from him. So, as Lamar goes, so does Mark Andrews. And therefore, I think that this is going to be a more spot. All
right, we'll do one more here. How about Christian Kirk? Nick, give me a grade on this guy for the offseason signing. 68 yards per game he's averaging. How do you feel about him?
Look, I was never that against the addition of Christian Kirk in a vacuum. It was the money, and more so it was the other receivers who, were seemingly available either in free agency or via trade that it felt like the Jaguars just didn't inquire on. They kind of settled for like a B-list type of player when maybe they should have had their sights set a little bit higher. But look, overall, he's been fine. He's been completely fine. He's a borderline top 10 receiver in fantasy this season. If you're looking at just total production, he's inside the top 10. He's basically done exactly what AJ Brown has done this season for the Philadelphia Eagles. So production wise, it's been great. The only thing is, like, when you watch the Jags, like, he would be the perfect number 2 guy, right? Like, I think he's a little bit underqualified to do what they're asking him. Like, they still badly need a big physical outside contested catch type of receiver. And he's not that guy, but I think given the circumstances, it's gone about as well as it could have.
Yeah, I like this move a lot. He's playing really well lately too. So this game, the line right now, Baltimore -4. Can the Jags cover here?
The Jags could cover. I wouldn't bet on it. I think this line is a little bit too low. I know they're at Jacksonville. You don't just walk into TIAA Bank Stadium and get a victory, especially with this Jags team coming off of a bye. But I don't know. This is a team that always finds a way. Even if they have a good start, the scripted plays at the beginning of the game always seem to go well, and then it's a steady drop off from there. So I think they've at least proven, the Jags, that they could beat some of the bad teams. I don't think they could beat this Ravens team. So I like Baltimore to win by a touchdown.
John?
Give me 27-17 in favor of the Baltimore Ravens. I think that I've been very encouraged with how the defense looks. It's a matter of if the offense can kind of get out of its own way and get itself in gear. But as I've been saying throughout this segment, I think that this is a spot where the Ravens get on track offensively.
All right, very good. Moving on, I want to quickly touch on this Bengals-Titans game. I think this might be the best game of Sunday. Cincinnati on the road, favored by 1.5 in this one, but Joe Mixon not looking good. He went out with a concussion on Sunday. Nick, would you fire up Samaje Perine in your fantasy lineups this week or no?
If Joe Mixon doesn't play, then sure, you could consider it. I mean, this to me feels like you're just going to be chasing last week's production all season. If you're throwing Samaje Perine out there, I mean, it was just kind of a perfect storm where he got in the end zone 3 times with Mixon exiting that game early. So no, I kind of tend to shy away from those situations. When one guy goes off out of nowhere, it's like, Josh Palmer, I think, was another example this past week with the Chargers. Like his roster rate is going to skyrocket, and everybody's going to wonder, like, well, he had this big game last week, why can't he do it again? Like, very, very rarely do guys like that have huge games back to back. So no, I'm going to be off Samaje Perine, and I think I like the Titans to win this game. It's a bit of a suspicious line, and in some ways it's kind of reminiscent of Cowboys-Vikings last week, where you're thinking, okay, there's not a lot of respect here for the home team. It does kind of make you wonder what you're missing, but Tennessee looked pretty convincing to me at Green Bay. They were 3-point dogs in that game, and now they're home dogs against the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals could get Jamar Chase back. We'll see about that. Wouldn't count on it. If that's the case, maybe that pushes me in favor of the Bengals, but yet again, it just feels like the Titans are being disrespected.
All right, John. Derrick Henry averaging 101 yards per game. If that's his line on MKF, would you go more or less?
I'm going more. I know that the Bengals have done a decent job at kind of bolstering their run defense over the course of these last couple of years. They got good linebackers, good interior, but it's just a different game when Derrick Henry's out there. And the way that they are engineering things with him right now, I think that the Bengals are going to be getting dog tired out there of when Derrick Henry's coming at them for the 27th time on Sunday. So I think that, we're going to see him push for 30 carries and sort of along the lines of what Nick was saying about Travis Etienne. I think the volume alone is going to get him there, but I think there's going to be some explosiveness in there as well.
All right, Nick, how about Joe Burrow? He's averaging 289 yards per game. If that's his line, are you waiting on the Chase news before you play?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously that would make me feel better about it, but he's also shown in 2 of the last 3 games that he could put up big passing numbers without Jamar Chase. So the Browns game is the one that kind of sticks out as that outlier. Obviously, you're going up against a good secondary in Tennessee, but the thing with Burrow is if he has time, he can dice up anybody. I don't really worry about the secondary matchups. It's more offensive line versus defensive line, and that Titans defensive line, it worries me going up against Cincinnati's O-line. I know they were able to protect Burrow just well enough against Pittsburgh, even though he did turn the ball over, had some passes tipped. But Simmons going up against that Cincinnati offensive line is a bit worrisome. So my knee-jerk reaction initially is to go less here. I think Tennessee, great at controlling the ball, controlling clocks. Could be a game where Cincinnati ends up having fairly limited possessions.
All right, let's quickly do a speed round. We'll do a little rapid fire and just fire through some guys here. Tyreek Hill, the Dolphins at home against Houston. Hill is averaging 115 yards per game, John, more or less.
Give me the more. That guy is just unbelievable, and Houston is unbelievably bad.
All right, Nick, excuse me. Tampa Bay at Cleveland. Tom Brady averaging 280.5 yards per game, more or less.
I'm going less. It does feel like Tampa maybe has turned a corner offensively after these back-to-back wins. Obviously, the last time we saw them was in Germany against Seattle. I'm not quite sure I'm ready to buy in. This is the week that will ultimately tell us, I think, the direction of the Buccaneers going forward, but I'm going less on Brady.
John, Justin Herbert and the Chargers at Arizona. Herbert averaging 273 yards per game, more or less.
I mean, Arizona was pretty brutal last night, and Herbert looked pretty awesome on Sunday night. I feel like this is a great spot for him, so I'm going to take the more.
All right, let's talk about the running backs in the Raiders-Seahawks game. Nick, Josh Jacobs, 93 yards per game. He's averaging, more or less.
I think the pendulum swings back around for Josh Jacobs. I'm going less this week. I mean, he's had two of his biggest games of the year against Denver, which is a defense that like nobody but the Raiders can move the ball against Denver for whatever reason. They have the skeleton key in that matchup. But Seattle, coming in fresh off the bye, I think they're able to slow down Josh Jacobs, and whatever minor excitement the Raiders generated this past week comes crashing back down.
All right, John. Kenneth Walker against those Raiders, he's averaging 65 yards per game on the ground, more or less.
We're going more here. This is a really nice spot for him. I think that the Raiders they just don't have the linebacking talent. I think to slow him once he gets to the second level. I'm taking more.
Cash broke and linebacker broke in Vegas. Too bad. That's a shame. Anyways, finally, Nick, Patrick Mahomes against the Rams at home. Mahomes is averaging 326.5 yards per game. Does he go more than his average this week?
I don't think he does, because I don't think they'll need him to. This line is ballooned. We don't even know if Matthew Stafford's going to be available. I would say probably not at this point for the Rams if he's in concussion protocol for the second straight week. Obviously, no Cooper Kupp. I mean, this should be a walk in the park type of win for the Kansas City Chiefs. And, I like Mahomes to start fast, but in the second half, I think this is going to be a situation where we see a lot of Isaiah Pacheco just running clock against the Rams. So I like the Chiefs to coast here, but I don't think they need Patrick Mahomes to air it out against this Rams defense.
Hey, maybe Ben Scarana keeps him in the game for once. Maybe
we shall see.
Maybe this is the week after I drop him on my fantasy team this week. All right, that's going to do it for us. Enjoy the long weekend. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy football. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to hit subscribe on our YouTube page at Monkey Knife Fight, and good luck on your contest this week.